Terence Crawford is going to receive a lot of criticism for this because for some strange reason, over the last year or so, he's developed a lot of detractors who truly believe that, well, he's not fighting the best opponents available, even though he's a WBO welterweight champion. Now, this is how extreme these fans have become. Think about this. Instead of fighting Kell Brook, which he's going to get criticized for fighting, if he were to fight Sean Porter's next opponent, right, unbeaten German prospect Sebastian Formella, and that's going to be on August 22nd, right, on Fox. It's going to be in the main event of the evening. Showtime Sean Porter's coming back, and he's going to be taking on Sebastian Formella, who's 22-0 with 10 knockouts. Old Seabass from Germany. Can you imagine the kind of criticism that Terence Crawford would receive if he were to fight Seabass Formella, ranked number 24 in the world? You're not hearing a peep of criticism, though, directed towards Sean Porter, are you?
Right. You know, they see Terence Crawford as pound for pound, and you can either love him or hate him. You can find him, his accomplishments or his status to be warranted or unwarranted. But as far as his level of competition, I don't recall Terence Crawford ever turning down contracts or, you know, to me, He was the one always trying to initiate the fights with Errol Spence. You know, I mean, the ones who stepped up to the plate and was willing to fight, he fought them. You know, I mean,
you know what? That's such a good point, Rodney. So we're going to go into the mailbag right now. We got an email request, a question for the both of us from our good friend Antonio Luna, who's listening to the show out in Long Beach, California. Thank you for listening, Antonio. He asked us this. You know, guys, I'd like to know, do you think Top Rank is doing a good job with Terence Crawford? Thanks for the question, Antonio. You are absolutely right, Rodney. Because remember, the reason why, I mean, his first big break was he accepted a fight with one of the more dangerous punchers at 140 pounds when he was just campaigning as a lightweight at 135.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be fighting, Bradis Prescott was supposed to be fighting on HBO on the undercard of Mike Alvarado, Brandon Rios, right? Well, he was supposed to be fighting Khabib Alikverdiev. Alikverdiev got injured, fell off the card with 2 weeks remaining before the fight card, and Tim Bradley suggested it to Bob Arum and Cameron Duncan. They both shared the same manager and said, hey, you know what? I think Terence Crawford can take this guy. Why don't you give the fight to him? He's ready, and he's going to be fighting already on the undercard. He's already training. He's already ready to fight. So they pitched the idea to Terence Crawford. Now, keep in mind, he was campaigning at 35 at the time and says, sure, man, with 2 weeks' notice, fighting on HBO? Yeah, but he's, you know, and Bob was like, well, hey, man, you know what? We believe in you, but keep in mind, this is one of the hardest punchers at the 140-pound division. He just knocked out Amir Khan, giving him his first loss. Terence Crawford said, no problem, where do I sign? That's what kind of guy Terence Crawford is, right? Now, fast forward a couple years later. Mikey Garcia is in negotiations to fight Yuriorkis Gamboa. Mikey Garcia and his brother Robert, they're a little pissed because HBO is throwing bigger money at Yuriorkis. They're giving him the lion's share of the purse. Mikey took exception to that, saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm the current IBF champion. This guy's moving up to 35 to face me. It's like, I'm the one who should be receiving the lion's share here. This isn't right. Well, when negotiations fell apart, who did they call? Terence Crawford. Hey, do you want to step in the ring with undefeated former Olympian, knockout artist Yuriorkis Gamboa? TC said, sure, where do I sign? This is a guy who doesn't duck anybody. He does not avoid fights. He fights who is ever in front of them. This guy is a virtual nightmare to prepare for. Also, he's a switch-hitting badass. Just look at his resume. Bradis Prescott, Ricky Burns, Yuriorkis Gamboa, Raymundo Beltran, Tomas Delorme, Hank Lundy, an undefeated Victor Postal, who is coming off knocking out Lucas Matisse, John Molina Jr., Julius Ndongo, who is previously undefeated and coming off of a knockout, Jeff Horn, who is coming off of a victory over Manny Pacquiao, formerly undefeated Jose Benavidez Jr., Amir Khan, formerly undefeated Igis Kavalasquez, former Olympian. This is a guy who doesn't shy away from fighting anybody. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. So, by the way, to answer the question, of course Top Rank is doing a tremendous job with Terence Crawford. What fans don't realize, Rodney, is do you realize how much Terence Crawford actually made in his 2 appearances last year? He made $5.5 million in his pay-per-view against Amir Khan, and he made $4 million to fight Igis Kavalasquez. So he's got a promoter with all the TV dates, right? He's a major title holder, and he made almost a cool $10 million last year. Can you think of any other fighters, maybe a handful, that are making $10 million a year and has as many TV dates as he wants on the flagship ESPN? Yeah, I'd say Top Rank is doing a pretty good job, man. Your final thoughts on this, brother?
Well, I think so many fans, they find solace in trying to discredit someone who, for whatever reason, may not be their most liked fighter or favorite fighter. And the way you do that is say, well, you know what? He's not being promoted right. No one knows who he is, and maybe he doesn't deserve a fight with another 147-pounder on a different promotional banner. Okay? You know, I mean, again, it's silly, it's nonsense, and you're saying Top Rank. I mean, you know, you to even entertain that, you have to have a sense illusional, because you're right. He has the TV gates. He's getting the big fights, but, you know, these guys can't make the other fighters have the balls and say, you know what, let me step up and fight you, win, lose, or draw. Okay?
You know, and a huge misconception is, Rodney, here also this, a huge misconception. A lot of people are saying, well, you know what, he needs to go across the street and sign and fight the big boys. Okay, well, he's contractually obligated to fight under the directive and under the promotional banner of Top Rank, and he's got the TV dates on ESPN, right, which everyone has in their home, right? It's a bigger platform, right? So here's what most people don't realize. Every single one of Al Heyman's fighters are not contractually obligated to any network or promotional outfit. They're all free agents. So
well,
that's the last thing I'm going to say about it.
You know, fighters are very aware of the risk when you face some of these fighters of a caliber of a Terence Crawford, or even Earl Spence prior to him having the car wreck, the car accident.
Indeed, man.
And I'm just say this before we move on. You have a lot more fighters chomping at the bit since Earl Spence has went through that, you know, dramatic car accident. And as I said, at the elite level, it just takes 1% or 2% slippage before fighters can recognize and say, you know what, man, he's not the same fighter, or I may have a better chance with him than previously. So I'm just going to say, man, I hope fans stop trying to discredit these fighters or being scared or not being marketed right or not worth the risk or I mean, it's nonsense. And, man, come on. We're still doing what we did 10 years ago.
Indeed. Very well said, Rodney. And, yeah, the truth of the matter is, guys, these guys are fearless. They take punishment for your entertainment. Each one of these fighters would step in the ring with Godzilla if it had a hefty paycheck attached to it. That's the reality.